Hi, I'm Jim Lowe, and welcome to High Country Chronicles Knives and Gear. Today, I have a gear review of the Shokz OpenRun Bone Conduction Sport Headphones. Here's the bluff. If you're a runner, hiker, backpacker, or just someone that wants to be able to hear their surroundings better, the OpenRun is for you. If you're a road runner that runs a lot in crowded areas, if you're someone that's working out at the gym, if you're anywhere where there's going to be a lot of ambient noise, then these probably aren't for you. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about them. I originally picked them up because I was looking for an alternative to my over-ear headset. Now, traditionally, this is what I wore running. I don't typically backpack with with the headset on. I didn't used to hike with a headset on either, but I know there are people that do. I've got friends that do it. From a running standpoint, I used to run in these. The reason that I ran in these as opposed to like standard earbuds is because I've always been concerned with hearing loss. I've got partial hearing loss in my one ear. I was concerned about exacerbating that and also having additional hearing loss. So I've always run in these. As you can see, it's got this cord on it. Became a bit cumbersome over time, and I decided that I wanted to opt for something Bluetooth. I went out looking for something similar in Bluetooth, found something that I didn't really like. I was at the running store up in El Dorado Hills, and they had these on display, and I put a couple on, and the sound was really good. And I figured I'd give them a try. Being bone conduction, I figured that maybe there would be less of a chance of hearing damage than if I was wearing earbuds. Frankly, I think I haven't looked at any of the research, and I think time will tell, because I think the one drawback of these to something like this, these have to be set louder for me to hear them than if I'm running with these. If I'm running with these, it cancels out all the ambient noise, and I can set this pretty low and still hear it pretty well. I can't hear what's going on around me, but I can hear the music or the podcast or whatever I'm listening to really well. Whereas with these, it's really dependent on how much ambient noise is around you. And so therefore, you're turning these up, or I feel like I am turning them up louder than I would if they were over ear. So is that going to be better for me over time? Frankly, I don't know. It is bone conduction, but I've got to figure that the way you hear anyway is really just the vibrating of little bones in your ears. I don't know if these have been in use long enough for there actually to be studies out there that discuss this. It is something that I need to look into from a personal standpoint. So that said, let's take a look at them. They come in this nice packaging. You get the headset itself, you get a power cord, which has a unique charging adapter here. You can see it just sort of fits right into the headset here, and it's magnetic, so you can't install it the wrong way. It will only seat one way. And you get the user guide. There are 3 sets of buttons on the headset, and those make up your controls. You've got these 2 buttons here on the right hand side. So this front button is your volume up. It's also your on and off switch. The button on the left side is your volume down. On the opposite side, on your left side, you've got this button right here on the temple tab. And so what this does is it will turn your music on and off. It will allow you to answer phones or not. 2 clicks will move you forward in a playlist. 3 clicks will move you back. So these come in several sizes and several models. This is the sport model, and I believe this is kind of like their standard size. It just fits over the ears like this. And you can see it just sits right in front of the ear, right here on the temple. Again, it's got the buttons, so it's got the front button here and the back button here, pretty easy to find. And then it's got this button right here, also pretty easy to find. You can index it pretty well with your fingers. I do find that this button is a little bit easier to forget that it's there, and by that I mean you're so used to working this one because it's the on-off switch, it's the volume switch. But when you come over here, you kind of want to do this at first and touch back here, but it's right up here on the temple. Just a minor thing. You can see in the back, it kind of I've got a little bit of room back here. I've got a pretty big head. I don't know what my head is like near my neck compared to other people, but I do have a pretty big head, and these are fine. The only issue I've ever had with them is if I'm wearing like my Petzl Now. My Petzl Now has a battery pack, and so that battery pack and the Petzl Now, I'm gonna have to sort of adjust the Petzl Now forward and aft on my head. But otherwise, there's no issues. So on the back of the box, it gives you some information about the headset. So again, I've got the Sport headset in the black color. This particular headset comes with premium pitch 2.0 plus stereo sound. Again, the sound is actually really good. It says that they're noise canceling. I don't really know how that's a thing. Maybe they send through white noise with whatever you're listening to, but when you're running with these on and you're running in a crowd, or you're running along with traffic, you're going to be turning it up all the way if you want to hear. And again, that's what kind of makes me nervous. I don't want to have it all the way up to the loudest setting as I'm running through traffic just to hear it and trying to drown out traffic. To me, that kind of defeats the purpose of trying to save my hearing. So if I'm running through traffic, I just turn off whatever it is I'm listening to, run through the traffic, and then turn it back on when it's a little bit quieter. So it says that it has 8 hours of music and calls. I've had these for over a year. I've had no problems with the batteries. I can't recall ever having the battery run out on me. I have gotten to the point when I've turned it off and turned it back on, it's told me that it's low, but I've run 50 Ks, I've run 100 Ks, and I've had no issues with batteries. It says it's waterproof. It also says that the frame is titanium, which explains why it's so light. It's only like 26 grams, so it's super light, and it's really comfortable on your ears. There's also a quick charge function where you plug it in for 10 minutes and it'll charge up to an hour and a half worth of battery life. I guess if you get up in the morning and you've left them on your nightstand for several days and the battery has gone dead, which I've never had happen to me, but let's say you go out on an 8-hour run or an 8-hour hike on Saturday, and you pick them up again on Sunday and you forgot to plug them in for 10 minutes, and you've got an hour and a half's worth of music or podcast or whatever it is you're listening to. And so that's pretty much the headset in a nutshell. There are a couple other features that they don't tell you about that you kind of have to discover. Like, I've been able to make calls by tapping it. I couldn't tell you how I did that now because it just happened accidentally, but it has happened. I guess a couple other things that I can tell you about it is, for taking calls, it's probably not the best. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if, I guess it's just a headset, so maybe the reason has to do with when you're taking phones and where the microphone is and where your phone is in relation to your mouth when you're doing that. I don't know. I've not been able to figure out a consistent cause of, sometimes I'm talking on the headset and people can hear me fine, and the audio on both ends is great. Other times, not so much, and I've not yet figured out why that is. I can have my phone right in front of me talking to somebody, and they're telling me that I sound like, I'm in a tunnel or something. And I don't know if that's a function of the headset or if it's a function of how the iPhone operates with just a headphone on Bluetooth. I couldn't tell you that. The other thing that I would tell you is, when you connect it to Bluetooth, what you're going to want to do is, at least for an iPhone, you're going to want to go into your iPhone, and there's a setting in Bluetooth, OpenRun by Shokz, and then it's got this, it says device type, and then when you go into device type, you're going to want to select headphone. If you don't select anything, one of the things that does is it actually limits the volume range on the headset. So this is really easy to operate. As I said before, turn on some music here. Okay, so turn on some music, click the on button. It says welcome to shock, tells me whether the battery's high, medium, low, tells me that it's connected. It's connected. Now, when I turn on the headphone setting, with the headset setting, I've got 16 different levels of volume that I can select in the range from lowest to highest. When the phone initially selected the default, whatever that was, I only had like 10 settings. And so the issue there is I came to a point where sometimes it would be too loud, or sometimes it wouldn't be loud enough, and I couldn't really sort of do that little micro adjustment. After selecting the headset setting, I was able to get that micro adjustment, and so now I can more easily adjust it within the range. And that's still somewhat of a problem. It is because, I don't know, maybe just because of the way I am, I have to set it a little bit higher than I would like to hear it, because the next level down is a little bit too quiet. Now, one of the things about this, if you're used to running or hiking with a headset on or ear pods on, when you start running with these, you're going to hear every little thing that you didn't hear before. Which, if you live in mountain lion country like I do, every rustle of the leaves on the ground is going to sound like a mountain lion. You're going to be startled by all of it, because you might be used to hearing it with your other headset on, but it's so low, it's so small, that it just seems like a small creature. Now that you've got these on and you can hear it, it's much louder. It makes it seem like it's louder than it is. So you've got squirrels or chipmunks that are just rustling along the forest floor. They're going to sound bigger at first than they actually are, and then you get used to it and you're like, okay, well, that's a chipmunk. Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing. It's actually interesting, because when I used to hike, or when I hike without headsets on, it never really caught my attention. But now that I've got headsets on and I've got other sound coming in, and I can also hear what's going on around me, initially it kind of makes you stop and look around, and then you realize over time, you get adjusted to it. You're like, okay, well, that's just a squirrel, or that's whatever. But at first, it is a little bit interesting to get used to. What else do I have to say about it? I think that's really it. I think if you're a runner, and you're a trail runner especially, I think this would be good for you. If you're somebody that likes to hike or backpack with music, or listening to podcasts, I think it would be good for you. If you're a walker, if you like to walk around town, and you want to be able to hear what's going on, and you want to be able to listen to your podcast, if you live in the suburbs, I think that's going to be great for you, because you will be able to hear oncoming traffic in the event that you might in the event that you're someplace where you're normally not used to hearing that, right? If you're walking down a country road and all of a sudden some car comes around the corner and they're out of control, you'll be able to hear that. If you live in the city and you run early mornings or late at night and it's relatively quiet and you want to be able to hear around you for safety, I think these would be great for that. If you're running in a race and you want to listen to your podcast or your music or whatever, especially if it's an ultra, or in places where they don't want you to wear a headset, or they frown on it because you need to be able to hear your other runners, these would be good for that as well. I think in ultras these would be good, because if you're like me, back of the packer, you're going to be off by yourself for a lot of the race, and it's nice to have music or podcasts or audiobooks or whatever. If you're running like San Jose rock and roll half marathon, maybe not so much. Why? Because you're going to have a lot of ambient noise. You're going to have to turn these up really high to hear anything. So for something like that, if you're going to wear a headset, then something like this would be better. I think for anybody that's looking for an alternative to earbuds, and you want to still be able to hear what's around you, and it's going to be somewhat quiet, I think these are for you. If it's not going to be somewhat quiet, then and you're looking for a replacement for earbuds, I would go with something like this. These are old-fashioned, but you can still find them around. I guess that's all I have to say about it. I would recommend them. I've enjoyed them. They've been great. I wear them when I'm running. I do wear them when I'm rucking on the weekends. I even wear them in the gym. I probably have them a little bit too high in the gym, but I do wear them in the gym just because it's convenient for me to be wearing Bluetooth headset as opposed to something like this. And something like this, You can't see it here, but I always had to get, now that that the Apple phones have changed, I had to get an adapter to fit into the bottom of this. And that's another reason why I decided to go to Bluetooth, because I'd have to replace the adapter every 6 or 9 months, because as you're running it gets folded over and whatever. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.
I seek solitude and rest. Take the stress off my chest. Words are empty when majestic is everywhere.